As a formality, since I'm here in the space at the opening.
Lovely. As the CEO of so that would make sense. That'd be wonderful. Ooh, I'm working on my portrait framing skills. I hope I'm not making anyone sick on Instagram.
I see it now.
Oh, we got some people, or at least one who's in both places.
Wow, everyone's skins are so cool.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that there's no Steves here. That's so cool.
Hey, don't be mean to Steves.
No, it's okay to be a Steve.
Is Cool John NYC the camera?
Yes, and Cat is also the camera.
Yeah.
The Instagram camera. I guess mine is the main camera. Welcome
I
everyone.
love your hoodie, John.
Thank you. It's a panda. Okay, well, I guess we are live, so we can get started or welcome people, perhaps. I'm John Hampton. I'm the ED and CEO of the Mackenzie Art Gallery. I'm very excited to welcome everyone to our very first event with very first opening reception with Ender Gallery in the Minecraft server. I'm here gathered on Treaty 4 territory in Oskanika-Sateki, Regina, Saskatchewan. This is the homeland of the Métis Nation, the traditional territories of the Cree, Lakota, Dakota, Nakota, and Saulteaux people, where people are gathered from all over the world as well. So if you take a moment to acknowledge the territory you're on, the land that we use to bury the cables that connect us, the servers on which this is operating, the electricity through which it's coming through, and think about how we occupy land and the ways in which we do so impact our imagination and our understanding of what our bodies can be on this territory, and how the territory I'm speaking from here with the relatively new concept of a binary gender being introduced with the colonizations of this territory, and being a requisite component of land ownership, of having binary genders and a system of family and ownership and inheritance that's required through these patriarchal systems, and how we can look to both futures and also to pasts and other ways of doing things to use Minecraft to help us do so. I'm going to hand it off now to Jonathan and Kat to do the rest of the introduction. Thanks.
Thank you so much, John. Yes, thank you everyone for joining us today on the Minecraft server here. Welcome. It's exciting to have the public here for the first time. And it's especially exciting to be opening our first exhibit by our first resident, Kat Haines. Kat Haines's Gender Gallery exhibition. So yes, I'm Kat Blimke. I'm the digital operations coordinator at the Mackenzie Art Gallery. I'm one of the co-curators of Ender Gallery, and I use she/her pronouns. And I'm also I'm also the Instagram camera for this evening. If I'm staring in your direction. It's an honor to introduce this exhibit, which as curators, we've had the pleasure to see develop over the course of 2 months through Kat's residency on the server. It's been both very thoughtful and thought-provoking. This process, as Haines' practice, has explored the affordances of Minecraft to create spaces for trends and queer narratives and intimacies in this digital world. My co-curators over here, Sarah and Jonathan.
Hi, on the camera.
I'm jumping.
Yeah, great. And the three of us are just so pleased to have been a part and witness to this excellent exhibition by Kat Haines, and we'd love to throw it over to you, Kat.
Gosh, thank you. And thank you for such a thoughtful land acknowledgement, John. That was really great to set the space and kind of set the stage. I guess I wanted to thank a few people. I wanted to thank the Mackenzie Art Gallery and Ender Gallery for affording me this opportunity. It's been really incredible to have time and space to explore my art practice more intentionally. And it's been really cool to see what kind of things have developed out of that. I also want to thank my partners, Jay and Aviana and Aspen and Nova, who have all been incredibly supportive and who have helped me in just incredible and in numerous ways to make this exhibit a reality. So I'm very grateful for their support and the space they've given me to just like read my poetry at them over and over and over again. And I'm also so grateful for all of the audience that has showed up to the open studio performances that we've done and everybody who's in the world here. It's so exciting to have people in this space. Yeah, I guess I would like to invite everybody into the gallery building where we can go up to the balcony, and then we'll have a little, there's this large phallic effigy that I'm sure you've noticed. We're going to burn it. We're going to burn it as a tribute to the spectacle of gender, of transition-based surgeries. So we're gonna burn it, and we're gonna see the spectacle of the transformation of a body part, and hopefully it's wonderful. So if you would follow me. And please help yourself to some cake to celebrate if you'd like. I hope you can interact with it in the mode that you're in. There's also a chest upstairs with some refreshments. So please help yourself to some refreshments because I know we're in adventure mode and you might get hungry. Oh no.
Kat, can you tell us a little more about the building we're in?
Yeah, this is the gallery building. It was the first thing I created when I started the residency. I thought it was really important to base the residency around like having an actual residence for it. So there's a little bedroom downstairs that's my private residence, and the rest of the building is kind of open to everybody. Inside here, there's a little talk area with some speakers and a table to gather around. So we might come back here for a discussion, or we could use the discussion pit outside. Yeah, this building it's grown and it's changed through the different performances. There's sort of some chairs out here to lounge on and have conversations now. There's this bar space, which is a motif that I have in the gallery building as well. And it's been my little home during my residency, and it's been kind of a little sweet spot to just have and exist in.
Thanks.
So I'm gonna go get the show started, if we're feeling good about that. So
I'm feeling very, very good.
I invite everybody to watch. Probably the balcony will be sort of the best stage. Haven't. We're gonna see how this burns. It should be pretty exciting, I hope. Oh, it's burning so well. This is so glorious.
It's spectacular.
Fire is such an elegant surgeon.
We'll see. It looks like the sort of lower portion has burned really well, exposing the new fresh genitals underneath. We'll see how this shaft burns.
As we undertake this kind of ritual sacrifice, is there any way we should be, or is that a appropriate way to think of it? Is there any way we should be directing our intentions as we participate in this ritual?
Yeah, I would love for people to reflect on the way that society makes a spectacle out of trans bodies and trans genitals, especially through very rigid notions of what transition should look like. It's sort of ironic that there's this very binary, or what could be perceived as a very binary kind of image happening right now. But I think the inside of the gallery really challenges a lot of that binary notion around what is or isn't appropriate, or what is or isn't transition. And I think we often think about this being as sort of the core or the most important part of transition. And for a lot of people it is, but for a lot of people it isn't. And so just reflecting on sort of our relationship and expectations around surgery. Okay, let's get this burning some more.
Can I ask a question about the color choice in the effigy?
Yes, please.
Is it the trans flag colors, or?
It was, yes, it was originally going to be a big trans flag, and then I have ADHD. So I just forgot what I was doing, and I made it all blue, which was the base color. So as this finishes burning, I guess we can. I kind of like the motif of the leftover wool. So we might just kind of let it burn itself out, and then we can take a look inside the gallery. And I'll share about 2 or 3 pieces that are pieces I haven't shared in the previous open studios. And then I would just welcome people to explore and socialize and have a lovely time. So if you're feeling brave, you can jump off the balcony, but that might hurt you. Otherwise, you can take the stairs back down. And that's
also, I make an offer that if anyone needs anything, we can help. I don't know if you're injured or hungry.
I healed pretty quickly from that fall.
Okay, that's good. So yeah, if people would like to follow me, I guess I'll make a note about the sort of vulva structure that we're going to enter through. And that's that these have been, there's so many squids, it's so distracting. The textures of the the vulva and the vagina are drawn from a self-exam image that I took. And I took little 16 by 16 block textures out of it to create these textures from my actual body parts. And so in a very real way, this is like skinned with my skin. And so with that, we can head in. It requires a little bit of dexterity. So feel free to explore as everybody comes in. Unable to read books. Do we know if there's a way to fix that, Sarah?
Yeah. Let me see what I can do. Can you not read books, Kat?
I can read books.
Okay.
I think
I'll see what I can
yes,
do about
yeah.
enabling the rest of you to read books.
I think the textures aren't appearing on on the computer that we're streaming from, so I'm just going to jump out of the server and jump back in real fast.
Okay.
They are, however, appearing on the Instagram stories, but that will not be noticed.
There, I think it's
Great. I'll give you.
yes, thank you. Somebody noticed in the. There we go. Okay, I'm gonna go back outside because the skinned box from the outside were not prepared correctly. So here is the correct textures.
We can also, if books aren't working right now, I can read the books aloud for each piece, and then we can troubleshoot this later, maybe.
I would recommend that because it might take me a minute or two at least. And then I'm also going to need people to test whether I've successfully. Actually, can someone try to read a book right now?
No go.
Still no. Okay. Okay.
Okay, well, I guess this is going to be a bit more performative than I was initially expecting, but that's totally okay. So this is sort of my artist statement, or what I would imagine being sort of didactic on the wall for this installation. So Gender Gallery, A Gallery of Desires by Haines. This installation is a reflection of my position as a white, genderqueer trans woman who has had access to medical transition technology, including hormones and surgery. Gender Gallery is a show and performance series that is both set in my body. What you just entered through is a block-by-block recreation of my vulva, and you are now in my vagina. But it does not center my body, at least in the way you might expect it to. The images within this gallery are drawn from my social media archive, with a select few from my personal and unpublished phone archive. The image for Lesbian Wedding was taken by my wedding photographer, Colin Stumpf, who you can find at Colin Stumpf Photo on Instagram. And the images for Psychopathia Transsexualis and the self-exam half of Polly Pocket were taken by my partner and artist Jay Kovach, who you can find on Instagram at I Have a Sickness. All of the photos were selected because they represent moments of desire in and throughout my transitions. They are moments which have shaped and reshaped my body, body image, and bodily possibilities. These moments have been expansive moments and important moments, and I seek to explore the limits of my identity, if such a thing exists, though I'm skeptical at this point. Gender never ends, at least I don't want it to have an end. I have transformed hard concrete blocks into subtle and soft representations of my body. Through the process of reskinning and renaming blocks, I've developed a deeper and more personal relationship with this space, and I invite you to partake in this deep and personal relationship. The genitals you entered through were crafted with care, a care I was never extended during the process of seeking and receiving surgical interventions into my body. I was never given a vulva lookbook, and I am forever upset about that. This exhibit is a reclamation of trans narratives, of my own narrative, of trans bodies, and of my own body. It extends beyond the limits of this gallery and includes the full space in the world. This world was largely created through and for performances, and this art centers discourse and the unfortunate power of theory in the lives of trans people. Theory defines our realities and sets the tone for our existence. Often we are nothing more than a theory. And yet we are so much more, and it is this so much more that I hope to capture in this exhibit. My marriage, my identity as a femme, finding myself in history, and writing and rewriting my own histories, and at every turn, desire. So I guess we'll kind of, if anybody has any questions at any point, feel free to ask in chat or in the voice chat, and I'm happy to answer. The next piece, or the first piece in the gallery, is Lesbian Wedding. Oh no. Let's put away our flint and tinder. I wanted to be a lesbian before I knew I could be a woman. How do you survive in such a non-space with what feels like and is an abject sexuality? Lisa the male-identified lesbian comes to mind, and the role of that joke in the L word in lesbian community. Can one be a lesbian without being a woman? Our community's beautiful and transgressive butches who reject womanhood tell us this is possible. Shouldn't I have access to this same transgression? Can I write myself a lesbian history in the same way I can rewrite a history, a trans history? What does it mean to recontextualize a past? The first lesbian wedding I attended was my own. I just didn't realize it at the time. It wasn't until many years later, talking in bed at 2 a.m. with my wife about transition and life and living and changing, and we realized we're wives, and so we kissed our first kiss as wife and wife. This piece is really important to me. It's weird to reflect on pictures that feel very different from who you are now. And recontextualizing my wedding as a lesbian wedding has really allowed me to find a lot more enjoyment and a lot more, it's a lot easier to go through my wedding photos and to really love them and to love who I am in them, because I can imagine myself as a lesbian even at that point in time, through rewriting my history. This next piece is a piece about my identity as a femme. And it goes like this. Femme as in acrylic nails, a capitalist metaphor for a revolutionary identity. Applying acrylic nails. 1. Remove old nail polish. As feminists, it is critical that we remove the veneer of the world and ensure we have a solid base upon which to build our work and our revolution. 2. Buff nails to rough the surface. Feminist and fem labor is often a grind, and like a grindstone, we are ground down ourselves in the process. 3. Apply and shape the nail forms. Oh, I think as people read, it changes it for me too. This is really fun. 3. Apply and shape the nail form. Being ground down and roughed up prepares us for this step, which is creative in that we take control of our desires and shape ourselves. 4. Apply the acrylic and let it dry. Wait until the acrylic is hardened like the world hardens a femme, a feminist, a revolutionary, and recall this hardening is not all bad. It is something we desire. But what does it mean to be femme, to be a femme? And to echo artist Jay Kovach, why femme and not simply woman? Simone de Beauvoir says that one is not born a woman, but becomes one. And we can become women through a variety of paths, some conscious and some unconscious. But to become a femme is always a conscious taking on of identity. And it is in this way, it is perhaps a form of transition. What does it mean to transition into femme, to become a femme? Is it the applying of makeup and nails, the fancying of one's hair? Is it putting on a tight dress and a jacket that means business? Or is it an attitude, the way we sit and exist within our bodies? And if we transition into femme, we must be critical of how that transition is framed. Who has access to the technology of transition, and what happens when we narrowly define that transition and those technologies as purely physical, as purely aesthetic? For access to these specific technologies requires access to capital, and access to capital is often something queer and trans is not often something queer and trans people have. We often prioritize community over capital, at least the queerest amongst us. Perhaps it would be better to say femme, as in my chewed up nails and fucking bleeding cuticles, an embodied metaphor that speaks to femme anxiety. Or femme, as in help me escape this capitalist hellscape and fall into my butch lover's arms at night. Or femme, as in the philosophy of anti-capitalist mutual aid as forwarded by my femme sex worker foremothers. To be a femme is perhaps to situate a revolution against the patriarchy within our own bodies, but we must be careful of this revolution, for it is so often bound up in a white capitalist ideology. And if we find ourselves in femme only to lose ourselves in its potential whiteness, we end up propagating the racist violence of so many white feminist movements. We find ourselves, but at the expense of so many others. And that's not the kind of femme I want to be. Okay, I'm hearing the books are working.
I like that you rewound the book. Be Kind, Rewind.
Be Kind, Rewind. It's so important. So maybe if books are readable now, I won't. We've kind of, the pieces left are the pieces I wanted to talk about anyways. So I'm going to talk about Psychopathia Transsexualis, but I'll let you actually read the book. This book is largely a series of quotes from a medical textbook from 1886. It was published over, I think, 12 or 16 volumes until 1902. And it was written by an author, Kraft Ebing. And he tried to taxonomize all forms of sexual difference and sexual deviance, where difference was defined as anything other than procreative heterosexual sex. Not even just heterosexual sex, but specifically procreative heterosexual sex. And within this, he creates a category called sexual inversion, which is a precursor to language that we would now use to describe gay people as well as trans people. And it is set up into different stages based on the intensity of the transformation or the inversion that Krafft-Ebing sees as taking place. And the book is made up of a series of case histories. And this case history is particularly interesting to me because it was written by, it's an autobiographical case history that was written by a doctor who describes herself as very clearly as a woman. And it's this really great text, this really great story in which the author has a bout of gout. And I replaced gout with anxiety in the story because the story is almost identical to me. And had a bout of gout and was taking warm baths. And one time when they were taking a bath, they basically smoked too much hemp extract, almost died of hashish poisoning, and suddenly realized that they were a woman from head to toe, suddenly saw themselves that way. And it's just this really great story about like finding myself in history. This moment of just like, you know, having a relaxing bath and smoking weed in the bath, and then just like thinking about my gender is like a very relatable experience for me. And so it's really interesting to connect myself to this textbook that is 140 years old, and to find an existence that I can relate to my own, even in this very pathologized framework. I can still see hints of myself. And it's just this importance of connecting back in history and seeing where we come from, and through that where we are going or not going. And I think one of the things that's really telling about this story is that at the end, Krafft-Ebing makes a note, and because this doctor still lives day to day, expressing masculinity and quote unquote living as a man, Krafft-Ebing says that he hasn't fully devolved into paranoia, which would be the acting out of those intentions and actually expressing that in a more constant way for Krafft-Ebing is what makes the next stage of transformation happen. And so the other piece I wanted to talk about was this Polly Pocket piece. And there's a couple pieces I'd love to talk about it. I'll read this piece because it's quite short. I open my legs like a Polly Pocket playset and explore what's inside. I have wanted a Polly Pocket since forever, but I was always too scared to ask for one, so I got a Mighty Max instead. My life has been structured by this desire, a desire I could never quite place, but that lived and lives within me as certainly as I am a woman. Desire shapes and is shaped by our experiences, our bodies, our lovers. Desires opens and closes our bodily possibilities. Our body remembers being desired and being rejected and being ignored and being. This is more of a written piece than a spoken piece, but it's also a piece that is maybe a little unfinished. And I wanted to speak to the unfinishedness of it because of why it's unfinished. And it's unfinished because I'm an artist, but I'm an artist activist. And throughout this period of residency, there's been a wave of anti-queer and anti-trans discourse happening in Regina through a debate about whether the city should support a ban on conversion therapy. And so during the last 2 or 3 weeks of my residency period, I was spending a lot of time working on that, and it was really difficult to find energy to work on this because being an activist and being an activist who's part of a marginalized community means that like people are very open about not liking work that you're doing. And so I had like negative messages sent to me. It's very emotionally tiring. And this written piece remains a little bit unfinished as a result. But I thought it was interesting to leave it as an artifact of that history, and thought that it was important to talk about that history at some point through this exhibit. Yeah. And then this final room, I'll just read this piece and then I'll say a little bit more about it. So content word, nudity and surgical healing. The image behind this door is a nude selfie I took shortly, i.e. days, after my vaginoplasty. It was the first moment I really had an opportunity to look at myself and appreciate my newly shaped body. This image is behind a door for a few reasons. The first is that Twitch community guidelines don't allow nudity, and so we didn't want it to just casually be around for the stream. Two is that the image is somewhat graphic in that it's a nude selfie shortly after a fairly major surgery. But also, and I'm not sure how to put this gently, but unless you're someone who has had, wants, or is considering a surgical transition, this image might not be for you. And this is something that I really wanted to explore in this piece. Minecraft and doors present an interesting opportunity to define and delineate an audience, to challenge who can casually gaze upon a particular image or take up a particular space. And if you're not part of that intended audience, but still have an interest in taking up this space and gazing upon this image, I ask that before you enter, you reflect on the following. Are you more interested in gazing upon my surgically shaped body or the moment this image represents? And how much of your interest is being driven by a desire to gaze upon and see, likely for the first time, a surgically constructed pussy? How society consumes trans women's body, and thus my body, is a central question in my politicized trans feminism. I can't stop anyone from entering this room, and I don't expect to either, and I don't really want to either. Instead, I ask and hope that you reflect on why you wish to enter this room. Why do you want to gaze upon a naked and vulnerable trans woman's body? And when you do, what do you expect to see? And so I do want to invite everybody in as I hold this space, especially because I'm sort of particularly here and holding this space. But I would sort of ask that people reflect upon that. And if you choose not to come inside, that's okay. I'll still talk a little bit about this piece. So it's called I'd Rather Be a Cyborg Than a Goddess. And it's a picture of me nude in front of a mirror, taking a cell phone camera selfie, with a catheter coming out of my newly surgically constructed genitals. It's a moment of exhaustion and pain and everything you would expect from recovering from a major surgery, but I still have this like tired smile on my face. And in this moment, I really reflected on Donna Haraway's cyborg theory, and on the statement, I'd rather be a cyborg than a goddess. This idea that we can take agency around our body, And our body can be holy, but our body can also be a construction. And our body is a construction regardless. It's a social construction. It is a biological construction. And this moment, I really saw myself as a cyborg, with this like catheter coming out of me being very, it was an interesting moment. And I would encourage people to like reflect on everything in this picture except for my genitals, to not focus on that, to maybe instead focus on my face, and the way I'm looking, and the way I have my arm up and then posing kind of sexily despite being, exhausted and gross and like just raw. So yeah, this is sort of the end of what I had planned to talk about. So maybe we can go to a space where people can ask some questions. And I would love to hear questions in chat or from Facebook or anywhere else and sort of start a conversation, or just let people mill around and explore and chat.
Yeah, maybe people can read the books now that they're available. The ones that you didn't read or revisit. And I'm wondering also if there's a building that's a gallery of the pussy art canon, that I don't know if everyone knows about. So that's outside too.
Yeah, so that's free to explore as well.
And there might be other spaces in here that I'm not sure if we're allowed into.
If you go, you're allowed in. If you go exploring, you might find some extra spaces. This is, in through here is the dance church. This is where we're going to have the Pack the Pussy dance party. We'll take down these chairs, push them aside, and we have this trans flag dance floor. Maybe, we can do some questions in here. We can have like a really formal question and answer period, since people are kind of just like finding their way into chairs naturally.
I'm going to take a picture of you at the lectern.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks really fantastic.
It's really fun. I'm actually going to take a picture of the audience, because it's really lovely to have like an actual audience in this room. So does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask in chat or over voice? I'm really open about answering sort of anything about this work.
We have a question from Dr. Faustus on YouTube. They ask, what game mode did you work in while you put this together? Did working in Minecraft throw up any particular challenges or unforeseen moments?
So I worked in creative mode. There were some unforeseen challenges, and some unforeseen moments. One was weather. When I was testing my effigy burn, it kept raining, because we're in like a rainforest biome, I think, and it was so annoying. And then my partner's 11-year-old was like, "Oh, you can just do this to turn off the weather." And it was like, oh, thank goodness. But the build itself for this was relatively, it wasn't like too complex. A lot more of it was like the writing and selecting images and getting the images into the texture pack, than sort of the actual construction itself. I think I finished the sort of main build within about the first 3 to 4 weeks of the project, and then the rest of the project was filling it with content.
I have a question, which I know you've talked about a bit in the Open Studios, but I I think it's one of a really interesting element to the work, sort of theoretically the parallels between reskinning blocks, reskinning sort of your own past in some ways, and the skins, the digital skins that we're wearing now. I'm just curious to hear your thoughts for maybe our new audience members who didn't watch the previous streams, or also any sort of updates to your thinking.
Yeah, I've found skinning my avatar to be a really enjoyable part of working through this. I haven't made any of my own skins, but I have browsed skins extensively to find ones that I like and that represent me at different moments. So I initially started out with like a very trans pride kind of avatar, and then moved to just like a cardigan and a flower crown. And now I have this lovely, beautiful red dress. I'll do a little twirl. That I found for the opening. In terms of reskinning the blocks and renaming the blocks using a language pack, I think that's a really powerful metaphor. One of the things that I talk about and that trans people talk about in terms of their bodies and how we talk about our bodies is the power of just renaming a body part. The power of calling your penis a clit, or however you identify different parts of your bodies. We can think about moves from talking about like breastfeeding to chest feeding as being really important. So yeah. We have a couple questions in the chat. From Royal Slick, have you noticed any changes in trans communities in the era of COVID? Yeah, there has been. I think there's really just sort of trans communities, in-person community is often really important. In-person spaces and trans spaces where people can gather and share in each other's affect, I think, and share, there's a lot of like whisper networks in trans communities about where to get safe healthcare from, where to get different services. A lot of that, some of that community has moved online, but there's definitely been a lack of physical community and a lack of sort of togetherness that we see with other communities as well. I think it's just like those communities for trans people can be such lifelines, and for those to be moved, like for other people as well. And so those move online, or they just disappear, or they shift and change in a lot of different ways. Wizard Munchin. In your introduction, you talked about the imposition of gender binaries onto the ownership of space. Is Minecraft inherently a space that allows you to challenge notions of gender, or are there roadblocks in Minecraft that you discovered during the project? This is really interesting. I guess there's two ways to approach this. Minecraft avatars are still weirdly binary. You can either choose like the classic frame or the slim frame, or this feminine slim frame when you're picking a skin and creating your character. And for a game that's so blocky, that feels so unnecessary. And there could be this really cool opportunity to challenge gender through what like a default avatar might look like. I think that could be interesting, but that would impose its own framework of what gender neutrality or non-binary people look like, and that would be a problem too. One of the things I find really interesting is that it's so easy to change your skin, especially with all of the custom skins that have been made already. You can just search for keywords and find like a set of suspenders that you look good in, or a fancy red dress for an event that you're going to. And I think in that way, it really allows you to explore gender and presentation in different ways through the way that you exist in this like semi-physical digital space in Minecraft with a particular skin can be a way of like playing with and experimenting with gender, I think.
We've got another question from YouTube, Kat, from Trip the Light Table. I'm new to Minecraft and I'm blown away by this space and the experience you've created, Kat. How long
Oh,
have
that's
you been... Yeah, blown away. How long have you been working in Minecraft? Have you ever created artwork in this space before the residency?
yeah, so I've been playing Minecraft for a long time, on and off. I remember probably close to a decade ago, my wife and I played on a server with some of our friends, and it was a really important social space for us. We would get together on voice chat and play together and build a world together. And so I have a lot of experience with Minecraft, but I had actually kind of put it down for like I hadn't played it for 5 or 6 years before I picked it up again for Ender Gallery. And it was such a pleasure to pick it up. I worked on this project for a 2-month residency period. And yeah, about the first half of it was kind of the building half, like I mentioned. And I haven't really created art like this before in Minecraft. So it was a really interesting challenge. Royal Slick asked, "What are some of the block renames?" So there are 3 block renames. The first is I renamed. They're all concrete. That's what I was talking about when I talked about renaming hard concrete into subtle flesh. So one of the concrete is renamed to vaginal cavity, and that's what this space is made out of. All of the walls. And then two other colors of concrete were renamed to labia minora and labia majora, and that's what I built the vulva out of. And I'm planning to, yeah, so if you search for those, you should be able to find them. I'm planning to release the texture pack and the language pack, basically the gallery pack, as an open source package after. So if you want to take more of a detailed look at what I did, that'll be available.
Really appreciated the depth of your content notice and looking at it as content in itself. And so, and you mentioned that you appreciated or were interested in the content warning or notice as indoors in these virtual spaces. I wonder if you could talk about that a little more.
Yeah, it's, I thought a lot about the intention of opening and walking through a door as being really important in looking at that picture or in taking up that space. I think there were sort of 2 things I wanted to do. The first was take it out of the casual eye field, make it into a very intentional space within the gallery, and then within that, challenge this notion of just like the purely consumptive mode that we often have towards trans people's and trans women's bodies, and to just have this like moment of reflection to be what am I expecting? Why do I want to look at this? And like, what is the way that I am consuming this image? To be really intentional about that. And I think in particular, once the gallery opening is done and people just sort of log on at a random time, I think that's when that becomes particularly interesting. And it's also sort of this challenge to cis supremacist space, that cis people have access to all space or should have access to all space, without taking sort of the care that other people are putting into it. So it was a lot of things, and the door was sort of like thinking about people exploring this individually. That notion of opening the door and walking through is a very intentional act. It's not something that you just kind of like stumble into.
Great, thank you.
We have a question from Twitch. Are there any other video games or works of game art that have had an influence on your creative practice?
This was a question that was asked before also, in a different way. Yeah, video games have definitely played a big role. In particular, I think in the development of my identity as a trans person and a woman. And in particular, I'm thinking of the 3DS games, Animal Crossing and Story of Season, which I'll come back to in a second, and the new Animal Crossing for Switch and Stardew Valley. These very like fantasy-based games where you get to create a life in a world are, I don't know if they sort of directly contribute to my artistic practice, but they have definitely contributed to my identity and my exploration of my identity. And Story of Seasons, I think that's the game, is really interesting because you can't have queer relationships in the game. You can't have gay relationships in the game, but any character can wear any clothing. And for the most part, it's a relatively gender neutral language type of game. They don't use a lot of pronouns. They don't use a lot of gendered language. And so I played as a quote unquote boy character, or that was like the avatar that I selected. But the first thing I did was like sell crops to save up enough money to buy a dress for myself, and then started flirting with all of the cute girls. And occasionally, it's really interesting because in the game, occasionally you get misgendered. Occasionally you'll get a letter from your parents saying like, yeah, occasionally you'll get a letter from like your parents or from a friend or something that'll like misgender you. And so you never quite escape the real world in that game if you're playing it as a trans character. But it is generally a really welcoming game for that. Sarah commented that the door content warning / questions is particularly powerful in this exhibit, which is otherwise so intimate. It's really arresting. Yeah, I'd love to talk about this. I'd love to hear people's like reactions, how you responded to that, because I really struggled with whether this was whether it was too intense, whether it was too much for the way this exhibit is structured. But I also wanted I did want it to be somewhat arresting for people who are not part of the intended audience. I think for people who are part of the intended audience, it might be less arresting. Even then, it still feels intense to take up that space, I feel. But it's an exploration about I don't know, about sharing intimacy and where we want people to be when we're sharing intimacy.
I really liked your response about restricting access, or at least questioning that universal access of the cis gays, and particularly in gallery spaces, but also in mainstream games like this, about who the assumed audience is. And when you enter into a game space, that as like a cis white male, there's no question that everything in that is intended for you
Yeah.
and for your consumption, which that is not a universal experience in consuming cultural content. So your response reminded me a little bit of Rebecca Belmore's performance in the Kandahar, that of that switch where it was only Indigenous folks could enter the Kandahar and the gallery and the bar, and everyone else had to wait outside for the whole performance. And just changing who is welcome into a space, but then also really switched the gaze from you to the viewer, and actually taking that moment of reflection on what type of work you're doing in the viewing.
Yeah, well, and I found it like it's scary as somebody from communities that are like often marginalized and spoken over, to try and set that restriction, to try and say like, no, this is a space for this. And I know that I know that space is going to be that space won't necessarily be respected in this exhibit. That's something that I thought about a lot. There are, in fact, like little moments you can discover if you don't respect the space restrictions. For example, there's like a diary in my private residence that I kept. And it wasn't something that I necessarily wanted to share publicly, but it was also something that if somebody wanted to go exploring, they could find it. And I think that's really interesting, thinking about like, even when we set up these space restrictions, people will disregard them. And so what do we do with that, and what can we create with that? Part of it can be this questioning while or before you enter the space, or hopefully if people sort of do read that book before they just like plow through that door. But yeah, people will always respond in whatever way they feel comfortable or entitled, or to the space and to the work. And so to challenge that is very scary. Or can be very scary. I feel like it's such low stakes in Minecraft, though, or it's lower stakes in Minecraft, it feels, because this game kind of disarms it a bit, but it's still a very intimate moment.
There's sort of thinking about this. So the folks, just for context as well, the folks on stream, the cameras didn't enter that space in the gallery, so the folks on stream have not engaged with that room. And sort of, I think in context, Melanie asks in YouTube, how do you think it's different for an audience viewing your work in Minecraft versus seeing the images in the gallery? Is there something about Minecraft that offers a new way to encounter artwork?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think like this exhibit couldn't. It would be much more difficult to install this exhibit in a gallery, in a physical gallery, to recreate in some way this like recreation of my vulva and my vagina, and to fill it with like large images is just like really outside of the this probably the scope of my abilities as an artist to install something like that. But also like financially, like a $35 copy of Minecraft lets you build really, really cool things. And there's not like $35 won't get you very far in the physical world. And so I think in terms of encountering art, I think it can do interesting things to the spaces around us. It can challenge what is a gallery or what is a respectable gallery, or whether respectability is like important in the gallery. And it can create, we can create these very elaborate spaces for people to navigate through if we want, or these very representational spaces very easily. And like really sort of challenge the like formal white wall of the gallery. Uh, but I think ultimately, like, despite all of these things that I did, I still set this up as a gallery, which is something that, like, I still didn't quite escape that as an artist, having this like formalized gallery. And so it does offer new opportunities for engaging with art. I think it's a different format than we have in the real world, and it's different to occupy the space in the game than to occupy the space. I think even over like one of the streams. There's more of like there might be more of an intimacy, I would suspect, where you get your own view rather than a camera view. You can interact with the world more intimately, and yeah, that's some thoughts about that.
I think
This,
maybe. Can you hear me?
yes,
Okay, I think my microphone was noisy earlier. I apologize. But I just wanted to say I think that it's really interesting. Kind of when we opened on the server, you described your first impulse as being to create a digital home, and I think that that's. I mean, I think it maybe speaks to what you're talking about now as well about claiming agency with a virtual space, or like the first thing you did was make a home here.
yeah, and that was really really important to me, to have that space. Partly because I was going to need a bed to sleep through the night if I wanted to not constantly set the time of day, but also just because I wanted, yeah, I wanted a nice space for the residency, and I kind of thought about like I remember applying for the residency, and it talked about bringing the real world to bear in the game. And so I really thought about like what would it mean to approach this residency like with that front of mind, and treat it as if like when I'm in Minecraft, I'm actually like in my studio doing art, and it's like this whole world, rather than just the art itself. Maybe if there's a lull in questions, we can take this conversation out to the conversation pit where it might be a bit sunnier.
Wonderful. There is one more question, but I think we can. I think we could totally transition over to a new space.
That'll be lovely. So if folks want to follow me.
Whoa, the sun.
This conversation pit is modeled slightly after a conversation pit at the University of Regina, which is the university I went to. And it's just a lovely place to hang out, a little less formal than where we were before, so it might spark some new conversation. And it's got some retro 70s carpet, which I think is really beautiful.
Perhaps appropriately then, this question we've saved for the conversation pit. Evie on Facebook asks, do you plan on writing academically about this residency?
That's a very Evie question, which is great. I probably will. This has been a very autotheoretical work, and which is to say, it's a work that sort of reflects on my life and my autobiography, but also pulls in theory. And I think that's that's a really important aspect of this work, and I really want to build on that theory and use these like in my dream world, if I had just infinite amounts of time, I would write papers about like each of the individual works probably, because each of them have so much behind them in terms of thinking about theory and the discourse around them, that it could be like each piece could be expanded into like an academic work potentially, along with like a piece about the gallery itself. So I do hope to, but I don't know what it'll look like because I'm not in school anymore. So I don't just have like infinite amount of time to write papers, infinite in air quotes.
I wonder then, do you have any plans, like after this piece, it'll exist kind of as this archive that you have available on the server, but will you continue exploring Minecraft? Are these themes in Minecraft? Or is there a space for gender gallery after Ender Gallery?
I haven't figured that out yet. I definitely want to, like I said, make the gallery pack available for people so they can install it in Minecraft themselves, and explore creating with those blocks. I'm interested in sharing the world so that other people can install it if they're interested, and reflect on it. Um, I'm not I'm not sure if I'll continue making things in Minecraft. I'll probably keep playing Minecraft because this has really re-sparked my love of it, and that might turn into something. That might turn into something bigger. I guess we'll see. But along with that question, there was one from Royal Slick, which was, out of Minecraft, what other forms of art do you make? I do a lot of sound art. I have a drone music practice under the moniker Witch Knife. So I'm just going to do a little one of these. Whoops. So if you want to see the weird music that I make, you can go to witchknife.bandcamp.com. I also make zines, weird, interesting zines. That's probably one of the main forms that I sort of do art, is through different forms of writing. I wasn't expecting this piece to become so heavy in writing, but it was what I just sort of where my exploration took me, was to explore this concept of like, what if I wrote books in Minecraft using the book interface? How would that change my writing? How would that change my writing practice? It's really weird to like fire up Minecraft as your text editor, and it's really annoying to interact with in some ways. I lost a bunch of writing a bunch of times. But yeah, other things I explore. I'm a very amateur emerging artist. This has been the first sort of major work or installation I've done. So I'm very grateful to this space. And then like a lot of like activist art in terms of like posters and show posters and collage. I love doing collage. Yeah.
guess I have a follow-up question, which is, do you see any continuities or connections between your music practice and your zine making practice and the experience of working in the game? I mean, I know you just talked about writing in game as being its own unique interface, but yeah, I'm curious. Was there carryover, or did the ideas translate in some way?
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of my practice is based on and a reflection of my exploration of my identity, and in weird ways, all of my practices kind of come back to that. Even my music practice. So for my drones, I'm going to talk about this weird thing I've been thinking about for a while, and that's this idea of like in the theory piece in the gallery, I talk about Judith Butler's concept of performativity, and this notion. Judith Butler has this idea that gender is what they call performative, and she doesn't mean performative as in a performance. She means performative as in a continuous copy of a copy of a copy. And in my drone music, I do a lot with loops, and I think about it a lot in terms of like a copy of a copy and about transitions between 2 or 3 or more different states and the way to make those transitions smooth or harsh or how we want them to sound. So it's very improvisational, but it's very it's still weirdly tied to my concepts of gender. Somebody asked why the hockey rink. If you'll follow me, we can come discover the hockey rink. This is one of the leftovers from a performance that I did. My friend and fellow academic, Evie, came to do an artist or an open studio with me. Maybe also the blocks are all copies of a copy too, in creative mode, definitely. So this hockey rink just existed because Evie had told me they had a dream about building a hockey rink in Minecraft, and I was like, or a skating rink in Minecraft, and I was like, oh, we could do that, and it'd be a great example of how easy it is to make something like a dream a reality in Minecraft. And so it's just kind of a fun leftover from a performance. I didn't really want to tear it down because it was a bunch of work to make. And one of the things I'm really proud of is if you look under the ice, it is a hockey rink, and it's actually, like, as far as Minecraft goes, a pretty regulation hockey rink, which I think is pretty funny.
We've got a question from Nick on Facebook stating that this is a fantastic project, Kat. And then also wondering if you have plans to release these texts as a physical zine.
Oh, that's a cool idea. I might. That can make a really cool zine to have like the pictures and the text accompanying them.
Yeah, and I think Nick might be interested. We'll connect you.
Yeah, definitely.
And we also just have a comment from Sima, who mentions that they have to go now, but that it's been an amazing opening, and what an incredible, thoughtful, and ambitious piece of art this is.
Oh, thank you, Sima. Yeah, maybe we can just like all switch modes to like charcuterie and wine now. And people can kind of socialize and explore. And if there are more questions that come up, I'll be around to answer them. Yeah.
Lovely. We do have we do have chat requests for POV cake eating and refreshment having for the stream. Who is not able to partake?
I just ate some.
Oh, nice.
Should I put everyone back from? I turned everyone into creative mode so that we could all see the block inventory.
Oh,
Should we
that's
all go
great.
back to adventure mode so that we can eat?
Yeah, you can show the block inventory on the local screen.
Permission to eat cake might need to be turned on.
Requesting permission for snacks.
Give them permission to eat cake.
If we come back out to the balcony, that's maybe where we can sort of finish the formal part. Is the crimson block viewing block? That was the world spawn. I think that's the world spawn, or it's really close to it. It was meant to mark the world spawn, so that I would know where people would spawn and kind of build things around it.
I got some real world snacks, but the thing is I have to mute my mic when I eat them.
All right. So I guess we're just gonna like hang out for another 30 minutes.
Or
The server will be open. I don't think, much like a typical opening, no obligation to stay. I'd personally like to explore a little bit because I
Yeah.
haven't been in a number of places in a while. So I think everyone should feel free to do that.
Maybe we can end the stream though.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, thank you. Is there anything else that you'd like the stream to know before we sign off?
I don't think so. This has been really lovely. Thank you everybody for coming and attending. It means the world to me.
I'd also like to say thank you, Kat, for putting together this exhibition, for being so generous with your reflections and thoughtful and patient as we aren't perfectly smooth with our exhibition logistics yet. And just for being part of the residency.
Yeah, it's been such a wonderful experience.
You've got lots of thank yous to Kat in the chat from everyone from sharing this work.
That's great.
All
Bye
right.
to the stream.
Yeah, everyone, you can visit ender.gallery/how-to-join to join the server. It will be open. Thank you so much for visiting.
Great, thank you.